Right. Good evening, everyone. Let's do this. This is the World Sports Chiropractic Federation official Sports Chiro Chat show thingy, whatever you want to call it. So this is the second episode. We are obviously this evening joined by Dan Morgan from Wales and
Hi.
Nat Akmens from Adelaide, Australia. So we have a stellar lineup here. Joining me, my name is Mika. I'm the host here this evening, and I work in the UK myself. Now, so last week, what we touched up on was essentially pretty much we established that sports chiropractic is bloody awesome. That's pretty much where we got to with Dan.
Yep.
So I'm thinking that's a good place to continue from. Obviously, we have Dan, who's been a sports chiro for a few years, Nat as well. So we got a fair bit of experience here in the room today. So we'll just kind of continue from where we left last time. So talking a little bit about our sort of clinical stuff, going through a little bit of how this current situation is affecting us on that. And we're going to play a little game this evening. So the game is to not say coronavirus and to not say COVID-19.
You've just lost.
If at any point those two words are uttered, it's a forfeit. And we'll come up with some suitably severe punishment for that later on to be dished out later on. So we got to be really careful. We don't mention those two things, right? Lads, you on?
Got it. I'm on it. Yep.
Good, excellent. So hey, Nat, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, obviously I know that you do big jobs for FICS at the moment with the membership commission. You basically look after pretty much all the sports chiropractors in the world on the world stage, which is pretty cool.
Yes,
maybe you're like Uncle Nat, maybe, I don't know. But tell us a little bit about what you do. What does it entail?
Wouldn't go that far, managing all the world's chiropractors, sports chiropractors, but my involvement in FICS is a big one. It's with the membership commission. And our commission is essentially charged with growing the membership and bringing whatever is of value and of benefit to our members through to them. So there's a lot of spitballing, a lot of ideas that we come up with that's going to best serve what our members would receive out of their FICS membership. What I was also able to do last year was join the FICS Executive Council as the Pacific Regional Representative. So that's been a new role as well.
Awesome.
And I guess what we'll get through is a little bit of the structure of FICS itself. The Executive Council is essentially the strategic arm of FICS, so deciding upon all the future and current direction of where things are headed. So that's my two biggest kind of jobs, I'd say, outside of being just a regular sports chiropractor here in Adelaide. So I'm based in South Australia, a smaller city compared to the rest of the country. But tell you what, it's super rewarding. We have a great community in and around the clinic that I work in. I've been calling myself a sports chiropractor ever since university. Fortunately, where I graduated from, which was Murdoch University, the dean of the school at that time was Brian Nook. So basically we learned technique of, we were able to learn technique of one of the very best and continues to be a mentor for me throughout.
Excellent.
So and really from those early days at Murdoch, chiropractic was essentially sports focused. There wasn't really a distinction at that time, and that's what got me hooked. Right at the beginning, I still remember that very first day that I rolled into the I guess the introduction class, and Brian was up there talking, and he weaved what chiropractic's benefits are right into the sports focus and the performance model and the injury management model. And from that point on, things just lifted off, and right throughout uni, continuing on from the first clinics I worked in right to the current clinic now. It's actually got more and more focus, to be honest. I think over
awesome.
over the course of the almost 10 years that I've been in practice. So yeah, that's a little bit of my story, I guess.
Oh, fantastic. And with any
Matt,
luck, we'll
you know
get...
that
Go on,
that
sorry.
drive. So yeah, that drive that you said, and that change in terms of becoming more sports focused in private practice in recent years, or as you've certainly developed as a practitioner, has that been a conscious decision, or is that something that's naturally developed, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it has been a conscious decision, but certainly one that has been naturally developed as well. There's so much evolution that comes in to being a practitioner, and when you're trying your best in the sports world, there's such a constant forward focus that you might reach a level of what you consider is a good practitioner, and then something else pops up, and that's what I've found is that we had the raw skill set, I guess, coming out of college, and then going into your first few practices, or in my case, the first few practices, there was an opportunity there to experiment, but you're really trying to learn how to be a public focused chiropractor as well. So we're trained in that kind of university model. And what I found in the early days was that, there was a different method to the clinic that I first went into, and I had to work through that. But then naturally, as I started to get some experience and start to build, I guess, some confidence in myself to bring the total package into it, to where the extent now is a full functional exam, full functional treatment options. Going into, I guess, what's a really interesting thing for me right now is that rehabilitation kind of idea, or movement, movement being the thing that drives crew. So certainly a natural evolution, as you just keep your eyes open and start to see what's around. There's so much good content around. There's so many great leading lights in the profession around and available for us,
Oh, absolutely. And like you said earlier, about the whole, like how you come out of university, a bit of a rough diamond, maybe. I mean, the way I kind of look at it is the university's role is to teach you not to kill anybody. Essentially, you are understand enough that you're safe. You know when to adjust and when to back off, and obviously when something is kind of out of your comfort zone. So, you're brave enough to say, look, I don't know how to deal with this, and that's absolutely fine, because then you just got to talk to your clinic principal or talk to your mentor, like you yourself. Have Brian as a mentor. That's absolutely brilliant, by the way. I might have to try and sweet talk him to be my mentor as well. But, with a little bit of arm twisting, we might get Brian to appear on the show as well at some point.
I think that's in the pipeline, mate.
I think that's probably more or less guaranteed. He'll sit down by the side of the fire and share a few stories from way back when. That'd be brilliant. But taking you up on
a 10-part series.
Sorry, say again.
His will be a 10-part series, and we'll all love it. That's the thing.
No, we'll just leave him recording. He'll just waffle on for like a few hours, and we'll just go and have a cup of tea. That kind of thing. Come back when he's ready. Yeah, but yeah, like you said, there's so many different ways or different directions you can develop yourself as a chiropractor, as a sports chiropractor. How you can learn to appreciate the human body, how everything does indeed tie together, and how everything is connected. So it's actually quite fascinating. Over the last week or so, I've been looking into I went through my bookshelf basically. How many different books I've got that explain something different, or a different point of view, or a different approach, or a different method. And I had probably 15 different books, like different topics. And it's phenomenal, really, when you come to think of it. They all talk about the same thing, but just with a slightly different twist.
I think it's really interesting that if you're being really hypercritical to that extent in looking at, as you said, there's 15 different books with 15 different methods of analysis and treatment, but you almost develop your own as you go throughout the clinic. You can't read in a textbook what you've developed through experience either, because we would probably have individual ways of assessing and individual ways of treating, but everyone else will have their own as well. And it's quite interesting that you're quite right, as you're saying, that you can read up on different methods of analysis and different methods like FMS, for example, and different movement screens. But we almost develop our own as we go through clinic life as well. I don't know if you guys agree with that. Yeah,
you kind of have to, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. And sorry.
Yeah. No, carry on. I mean, I think it's very important that you develop your own style, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it just shows mastery. If you just follow a protocol of, I mean, I don't want to kind of put down, there are certain chiropractic techniques that are very, what's the word, like prescriptive. So, if thing A happens, then you have to do B, and, if then C happens, then you have to do D, and so forth. I mean, I've never enjoyed that myself. I understand a lot of people do enjoy it. But I always found the freestyle method a little bit better, more suitable to my nature, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess it comes up to the difference in our personal nature, and some people are chasing that more prescriptive model, the frameworks. If this shows up, then I do that. So they're essentially, in my eyes, outsourcing that critical appraisal, but then also on the benefit is a streamlined process. So you kind of have these conflicting kind of elements, and I've always found myself weaving in between the two. And when it comes to new content, and you're looking at, your textbooks, and they're all of high value, I've never seen a patient that fits a textbook, and that's the interesting nature of that. Is you got to learn it, and that's the baseline. But then you almost have to forget it, because the person that comes into that clinic or you're treating field side is showing up something maybe just different, or that you've seen mentioned in 2 books. So you've got to bring them together. And for anyone that's kind of going through a learning process, there is that always that I guess capacity to simply just sit there and like hoover it all up and just have it in your brain, or you bring yourself to that seminar, you bring yourself to that workshop, and you say, well, where am I at right now, and what can I contribute with this learning right now? And I think that's a unique way to develop deeper and develop your style, because in the end, we all go through our 20 years of practice, 30 years of practice, and we might be the ones delivering a workshop. And that's not going to be off a textbook. That's going to be off our personal experience, along with common consensus and the rest. And that's just an interesting way to look at, I guess, the learning process. It's forever. Like every time I've felt like I've reached a level, something else just comes in to absolutely blow me apart again.
Or indeed, a patient just gives you something you haven't considered.
Exactly.
Which is my favorite when that happens. When that happens in clinic, I always make sure I thank the patient for an interesting case, and actually pushing me slightly out of my comfort zone, because, when you're sitting there going, let's figure this out. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, they're the best patients. They are. They're the best patients, and they're often the ones that you get the best results with as well. Yeah, because you really have to scratch around for those, for the answers, certainly. And again, we discussed this last time, though, Mika, and sometimes we can overcomplicate it. I don't know if you find the same, that we can very much overcomplicate an assessment, or overcomplicate the diagnosis, or overcomplicate things, where sometimes you just actually have to strain it back a little bit and go, right, let's just get back to basics and start from the bare minimum and then build up and layer it, rather than go into advanced movement assessments, etc. Look, strip it down, isolate it, and then progress into that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think some patients, if you, I mean, it's all around communication, and they have to be on board with what you're doing as well. And that's partly why why a patient with a challenging issue enjoys challenging you so much as well, and they almost stick with you, even though you feel like you're fumbling around in the dark. Is that they're seeing some evolution of yourself, and you're bringing yourself to there, and you're communicating that as well. So the experience that they're receiving is actually quite a good one, even though you might not necessarily have that laser focused certainty on exactly what's occurring. But for example, if you take a regular patient who might be just that weekender kind of sports person in the clinic, And if I ran a top tier complete functional assessment on them, what am I going to find? I'm going to find a lot of stuff,
Everything.
you know.
Everything.
Yeah. And it might not be so much of a benefit for them to hear that unless
It's what's relevant as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, unless they're hearing from you an important communication method or strategy that kind of handles that, doesn't just say that's going to be wrong. And we're going to be really kind of empowering crew. But then you get that really type A, you know, wants to you know, turn around an ultra or something in a matter of 2 or 3 months, who's like, no, get this done for me. And then you're like, cool, well, I have that skill set, it's in my toolkit, let's bring it to you. And they're as excited as the average, you know, go out for a stroll in the park or something person.
Oh, absolutely. But tell you what, you know, oftentimes when you find these patients who are, they kind of done the rounds already. I'm sure you had these patients, you know, you have your sort of mid 40s, maybe early 50s runner gentleman. Let's call him Bob, you know, just for simplicity's sake, we'll call him Bob the runner. And Bob comes to you and he says, right, I've been to see 5 different chiropractors, you know, 3 osteopaths and several physios, and nobody's been able to help me. Can you help me? What do you do? Come on, you gotta think of a bit outside the box. You know, probably the best thing to do is to go back to the very basics, because it's more or less guaranteed that everybody before you has thought, well, you know, up the ladder, and they've ignored something very simple, which I personally find oftentimes with patients as well, you know, when it comes, whether they're runners, whether they're whatever athletes, but if they can't walk, if they can't balance and stand up and you know, like these very basic skills, how are they supposed to run? Come on, man, without falling apart, without developing that crippling tightness in the hamstring and the calf and whatnot. So in that sense, yeah, bringing it back to the barest essentials again is I find is super important.
Yep. Yeah, I'd agree.
Yes, and obviously there's that element again, comes back to communication. How do you then tell the patient that, okay, right, now we're going to go back to year 1 in chiropractic college. Instead of using all this data that I have accumulated over the years in various different seminars, but we're going to go back to physiology 101.
I think Nat's point was really essential in the key thing with certainly like the weekend warrior type of patients that we discussed last time, Mika. We were saying about, you know, if you do really strip them down into the top tier functional assessments and you do look at and isolate them, you are going to find a lot wrong with them. And nobody likes to hear, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And it is really important to, you do need to find that balance between going, okay, well, this is an issue. It's not really relevant. Most people will have this. Or this is the problem. This is the issue that's giving you your pain, or is certainly not giving you your pain, but maybe leading to some dysfunctions further along the chain. And you will look at those and you will see them, but the trick comes in really knowing which ones to leave alone and which ones to actually identify and address. I think that comes with experience as well, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
I mean, and on that, like the ones that you might leave alone initially, 2 or 3 treatments further down that line, they're the ones that are like, oh geez, if only I you know, worked on those first. But that's the process, and that's why there is no textbook. It's essentially a blank canvas, and your experience and your skill set meeting that, and that's why you know, treating and going over the longer term is so enjoyable, is because you do have to work some interesting angles in the approach to the patient. I had one that wasn't getting any better for 2 or 3 weeks, and I just had to have a really hard conversation with him about him not doing his exercises, and he was basically passing all the blame onto myself as a practitioner. Yet we'd spent the last 2 or 3 treatments essentially going through all these exercises that I wanted him to do. He wasn't doing them. one stern conversation, basically pull your socks up, mate. Like, this is a two-way street. You can't just come in there and expect everything from me when you haven't done what I've mentioned. Then following week was his turnaround, and I'm sitting there going, was that just more of a, you know, something of the mind set and state around this? Was it something of the exercises? Well, I think we've got to consider all of this when we're seeing our patients.
But yeah,
absolutely.
There's an entire plethora of things that could have happened in that week, isn't there? You know, you could have absolutely, the psychology for that patient would have changed, or potentially may have changed. He may have actually been doing his rehab, which we find is always a barrier. And you know, there's so many things that can change. Maybe the adjustment status stick, you know, like anything. But the truth is that firstly, does it matter as long as it's helping? That's number one. But number two is, the truth is, it's probably a combination of all of those things as well. And I think that's the key thing, is that it is surprising to, since doing so I did my master's in sports medicine, and since I've been doing my master's in sports medicine and finishing that, getting a really effective prescription program for rehab and seeing how those things really, like, effectively progressions, you can see it. You can see how much that exercise prescription actually really does aid a patient. It's been a massive factor for me in the last couple of years in practice. So I'm completely with you on the rehab front. But yeah, it's amazing when you do have those patients and you actually sit them down and you go, look, you can pay me as much as you want, but you've got to do this. Because otherwise you're wasting that, you know, 30 quid, $40, whatever it is, you know, you are wasting that money. Take my advice, do it. Like, there's a two-way street. Always is.
Always.
And that's regardless of if it's a weekend warrior, if it's an athlete, you know, an elite athlete. Granted, in professional circles, you're going to have a multidisciplinary team, more than likely, that's going to have an impact on that. But nonetheless, if you can have your 2 pence worth and you can actually contribute. We've had one in elite rugby where you've been like, do you know what, I think you may actually benefit from a bit of Pilates and reformer work, and straight on, and it benefits straight away. So, you know, it's nice to have those conversations as well with other disciplines. I find it's really nice.
Absolutely, and that's the beauty of chiropractic as well, you know, and what we do, because we are able to communicate with all the other complementary medicine therapists and even obviously conventional medicine people as well. So we kind of sit in between the two worlds maybe. And so for us to have those relationships with, whether it's your local yoga studio or whether it's the Pilates instructor or Tai Chi master or whoever else, very important, because again, those just, you know, you probably will not refer every patient to the Tai Chi class, but it's right for maybe those 3 who really benefit from it, you know. Equally, if you need to send somebody in for acupuncture, it's real handy to know a local acupuncturist or whoever, you know. So in that sense, having that team together is very, very important. And if you are a member of or working for a club or something like that, where they have already that in place, then of course, you know, communicate with your team members, talk to them, trying to appreciate, understand where they come from, what they're particularly good at, what they like treating. And then, you know, you can be a really strong contributing member to the team. If you're not in a situation where your club has a massive budget to throw at the medical side, if you are doing more like the local Sunday 5-a-side football stuff, where you are the paramedic and you're the chiropractor and the physio and the water boy and whatever else, I mean, come on, man, then you need to have that team in place for yourself. And again, just knowing the local practitioners is really handy.
100%. Yeah, I'd agree with that. You know, looking at every avenue and bottom end of the chain to the top end of the chain, you need, you know, we can't do it all. There are elements where everyone will have a specialty and other people's will prefer this compared to preferring that, you know. and there's no one who's around you for that support. And even if it's another practitioner or another chiropractor, you think, Joe, well, you're better suited with this person. They're better at looking at, you know, the tail list than I am, or whatever. It's knowing your scope and knowing your range, and actually it's what's most beneficial for the patient and also for the athlete as well, I think is really important. So that's just my, you know, my viewpoint. I think that
there's
you guys agree.
There's plenty of patients for everybody. You know, that's the way I look at it. You know, we're never in competition with other chiros. We're not in competition with the osteopaths or physios. That's not the name of the game, right? There's plenty of patients for everybody. You know, I always look at these things, you know, from an abundance mindset rather than a scarcity mindset, because let's face it, you know, if you're good, you know, you develop your skill, you're like a nice person and whatnot, you're always going to do well. So you don't have to worry about like not having any patience, or if indeed you haven't got any patience, then maybe you need to look in the mirror rather than blame the competition as it goes.
Yeah, I guess it's inherent for a sports chiropractor to think like this. Hey, I mean, we've got a specialty for us that we know is of value, and then we view that through the lens of our patients. And sometimes some patients don't progress under our care. Perhaps we need to pull back and do some rehab. Perhaps we need to sit them down and do some more psychological stuff. Perhaps we need to refer in clinic, out of clinic, these types of situations. Again, it just doesn't read like a textbook at all. And I'm kind of thinking of the student or the new grad that's hearing this now and trying to organize your referral network. I mean, for us and for where I work, we do have massage. We do a full complementary of soft tissue techniques in our clinic as well. But on the outside, I've got personal trainers that I know that, you know, different personal trainers that I think are going to best benefit the patients that are coming through. There's a Pilates studio, there's a yoga studio just down the road. And we are actively sending people there, they're sending people back. So there's a referral relationship there. And I'm just constantly trying to broaden out someone's team behind them, a patient's team, because everyone's got something different to add.
I agree.
And you can always learn.
Interestingly, we've got a PT in our area. We actually share a name. We've got the same name. So when I refer to Daniel Morgan, and then they go to the gym and they're expecting me there, and I'm like, no, there's a different Daniel Morgan in there. And then he's referring to us, and they're like, oh yeah, you go and see Dan. And this is so confusing. So yeah, we've got a personal trainer, Daniel Morgan, and he's superb with his nutrition as well. So it's just general, like, you know, it's making people healthier on every level, isn't it? And knowing, all right, often we'll have a conversation, me and other Dan, we'll talk and we'll be about, you know, is this patient suitable for axial loading? And you're like, yeah, crack on, you know, robust. Just get load within tolerance and build. And it's, you know, unless it's maybe you're acute disc patients and you're going to be like, okay, well, let me get this flare sorted first, and then you can do what you need to do. And I think it's really good to have that network, and it's really good to have that that support around you, because ultimately patients will benefit. They're becoming active, healthier, increasing the variability in their movement, which is key. It's superb just to see, and you can really see the patients glow and they become so much better and happier. It's
confident, isn't it?
Yeah,
so much more confident in their day-to-day activities, movements. You know, the walk to the supermarket and to buy toilet paper, and that becomes a doddle when they actually can crack on with the handstands and whatnot. Isn't that right, Nat? I know. So in your bio, you put there that you're into your movement culture, which obviously is brilliant.
I had to say it
myself. But, so how many patients do you get to do handstands?
Oh, you know, again, they're as Dan was saying, we've screened them for that, right? It's not that your 78-year-old, you know, osteoarthritic hey, if that's their goal, we can regress until we need to.
Yeah, no, you just crack on. You give them a few supplements and tell them to start skipping first, and then a bit later you can introduce the whole handstand scenario.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the old kind of chiropractic joke, isn't it? That's the other way in. You you can overload them in the gym, and then they need you for that flare up. But
yeah, it's a vicious circle there, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm just wondering, Dan, is the other Daniel Morgan in your area your alter ego? Does he have any?
No, he's not. He is not. He's a real person.
So which one is Dan 1 and which one is Dan 2 though?
So like I'm Dan Cairo and he's Dan PT. So we literally no number ones, no number twos. This is literally like go and see Dan Cairo, and then it's like go see Dan PT. So we're he's a good guy, Dan. I was speaking to him earlier actually, because obviously the gyms are closed at the moment. So we're putting a lot of content out in terms of home activities and home exercises. And Dan has got one of the campus cleans I've ever seen, kettlebell clean. It looks like he's dancing fair bit there. There's a lot of head movement. So I was ribbing him about that for the last 10 minutes. So, but yeah, it's really good to have that network, and it is really, really helpful as well.
I guess, sorry to chime in. I guess what I was going to, jump in on the back on was that those guys are also feeling like we are in a way unsure at times, so what's of the benefit? How can this person that they're seeing who wants to train, and they're the personal trainer, but they have a shoulder issue, or they're showing up every Monday for their hour class with them. What do? Well, maybe they do a bit of mobility in the beginning, but really they get cracking. They get onto their training, and they're in the same boat of like, well, geez, I need this sorted. Who can I have? Who's around me that can actually provide that expertise on this matter? And there's been, again, situations like that in the clinic where months and months and months of issues have come through. I work on them for a matter of 3 or 4 weeks, and I turn them back, and they're return to function. And it's like maybe a bit of release here, maybe a bit of mobilization in some different areas. But the personal trainers and the movement crew are looking broadly at their clients in the same way that we're seeing our patients. They do have movement deficits. There is issue there. They're obviously motivated. There are goals in play, which are excellent. But to be that supporter, to be that person that maybe they can refer to have a conversation with, and also provide high quality service, that's the way through from my point of view.
Yeah, I agree. It's vital for them as it is for us, and it's certainly vital for the patient to have the communication between the two. I agree. I think it's a really good network to have. It's someone that you can trust to be able to, effectively look at their strength deficits and their movement deficits and their mobility deficits. As long as it's done effectively and efficiently, I got no problem with that at all.
And you'll find the best of the best anyway. You'll find the guys that are in your area that are providing the level of service that you see in yourself. And I think that naturally just comes through. You'll hear whispers of the ones that are overloading quite quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the kind of thing, let's clarify, I suppose, that building this network of trusted practitioners, it takes a little bit of time, for the new grads and students, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Who think that they just kind of jump in as the new star attraction in a given city, and all of a sudden the best people will just kind of flock to their banner. It probably won't happen like that. But yeah, no, bit by bit, you just have to kind of put yourself out there and make those conversations happen, and you develop your team.
Yeah, 100%.
No, absolutely. Well, hey, let's go for a slightly different thing actually here. Now, how to, again, oftentimes, I don't know if you guys notice this, but when you're communicating with patients in clinic and they come and present to you with a low back problem or a neck problem, and then you start looking at them functionally, you kind of make them do a few movements, whether it's a heel raise or a squat or whatever. And all of a sudden you tell them, right, actually, you know what, your problem is in your ankle. And then once the jaw hit the floor. So, you know, that's the kind of thing. I mean, I personally find that happens a lot, you know, where the real problem actually lies far away from the presentation. So what's your best way of communicating that to the patient so that they understand what you're on about, and you don't come across too much off the whatever wing?
Nat, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Sure, mate. I was wondering on what you had to offer there, Dan.
Sorry, mate. I'll jump in after you.
No, it's all good. I think context is super important, and it's something that I've been working on over the last few years. And again, like, this comes back to communication and understanding where a patient might be along their journey. And this is taking in their beliefs, expectations, why they've come in to see you, for what reason, what intensity even is around that, them talking to you about their concern as well. I think all this factors in, because that then leads us to the assessment. And naturally, we've already kind of touched on it. We can assess and find a lot of things. How often do you see glute weakness in your low back patients? It's like all the time. Yeah. And you might assess it. For certain people, that's the one kind of tag that I want them to really hone in on. For others, it's like, well, that's just part of the broader picture. And it's a harder kind of perspective to hold, I think, because again, you're coming off as less certain. You're coming off as more open in your communication style. But depending on if that squat and you're seeing that ankle lock up and it's kind of throwing that whole gravity line off balance now, the patient needs to know that. The patient needs to know that they're away from the site of their pain, for example, that there's other things going on. I think that's our job and duty as well. It's not to dismiss what they're coming in with. It's not to say, you know, what you are feeling is not correct. It's this, because that's introducing something brand new into their kind of like mind state. But there's always room to either focus on the primary or the secondary or the tertiary. Often when I'll finish that consult, or when I'm delivering my report on what I'm finding, I'll say, you know, this is the primary area where you're having these concerns. This is what's going on, and this is how we can help that. And then there'll always be a line out of that into the broader picture, the body. And I think, again, if I go back to my training as a chiropractor and as a sports chiropractor, I think was it Levitt that mentioned, he who treats at the site of pain is lost, and that's always in my mind. Carol Levitt, and it's up to us to bring full care and full treatment opportunity and full healing opportunity to the patient. I've heard on the flip side, practitioners who just say, no, the issue is here, you know, and so they go back to the ankle, they just treat the ankle. And some patients might hear that as, well, you're not listening to me. And that's how it's been described to me. So I'm always cautious just to work that angle. And again, it depends on the person as well.
You bang on in how that is communicated. You're absolutely bang on saying that if you know, again, it's your ankle is the problem. Well, but my back hurts. It's like, okay, yeah, but it's contributing to the problem. Is this is it primary? Is it tertiary? You know, where is it on that chain? I don't know. Is it cause and effect? I don't know. But we're going to treat them both. And that's my stance. My stance is, okay, well, yeah, do you know what? It's something going on. Is this physiological? Is it mechanical? You know, is there something that is physiologically stopping that ankle? And in which case, if it is, the chances are, if you've had that since you were a child, you've probably adapted to it now as an adult. So your adaptation will create a faulty movement pattern, or faulty beyond normal. But it's normal and completely functional for that individual. And that's where we can sometimes fall into a trap and saying, well, this isn't what we would expect. How long has it been like that? Is that new? And that's the thing as well, I think, that we need to be certain of, is that, have you noticed that you're struggling with this, and this recently? Or is this, or have you had a previous fracture there? Do you know what I mean?
So basically, so the question kind of becomes, how far back do you trace it, hey? If a patient has had a problem with their ankle since childhood and they're now in their 40s, would you then start correcting the ankle if it's still acutely flaring up? I probably personally would. Again, educating the patient along the way as best as I can. If on the other hand, the ankle looks like it's not contributing, then just leave it for a few treatments and see if it flares up later on. Because oftentimes you then notice the full extent of their adaptive process or the compensatory process. And that probably becomes apparent a bit later on in the treatment process.
Yeah, I think that, Nat, what do you feel? Do you feel as though you can get a functional compensation?
Yeah, I do.
Of course.
A structural compensation, a functional compensation. There's also the idea that this person has, in your words, Dan, adapted around this for such a long time that you remove that adaptation and be prepared to take on board whatever comes along with that. And
that's oftentimes they flare up initially.
The hip starts to, oh geez, I haven't had this hip issue ever. It's like, oh God, like how far down have I gone? I mean, and then you've got to weigh that up against the reasons of why they first consulted with you and what their purpose was behind that. Because if it was just to get a calf rub, or I don't know.
So it was a funny thing actually happened a while ago. This was a few years ago. So I was treating this runner, and he came originally with low back pain to the clinic, and we were doing our stuff, and then it might have been maybe the third or fourth treatment. He comes back in, and he says, "Oh, my right knee is killing me since what you did last time." And I'm thinking, tell me more. He goes,
classic.
Yeah, it's just on the outside of my knee. I haven't had pain in that area in 20 years. So I'm thinking, quick thinking there on my feet, right? Because right. So what we've done is we wound the clock back by 20 years.
Nice.
In a way, actually, it's probably true.
There is truth there.
We just kind of reverse the injury pattern clock, by a little bit. But the point is, his knee problem wasn't even a significant thing. Essentially, it was a bit of a flare-up of the fibular head. But the point is, he had not experienced it because he had been compensating for it extremely well for the last 20 years. Yeah. So, those kind of things, they do happen.
I think there's layers as well, isn't there? There's layers to a problem. It's the old Shrek analogy. What has layers? Cakes have layers. But it's like...
onions, mate. Mine's donkeys.
I always go with onions.
But nobody likes onions. Nobody likes onions. Cake has layers. No, but I think...
Well, they say you try and make some Asian cooking with cake. Ain't gonna work, man.
I don't know. I think everything would be better with cake.
Do you reckon?
But no, I think there's definitely layers, the functioning layers to every issue, and it's whether or not you take away that top layer, something else will surface. You take away the next layer, something else will surface, and it's just getting to that bottom layer and the underlying problem for your pain or the patient's pain.
I think that's right. And Mika, that's the way to communicate it anyhow, because our patients have forgotten. They've forgotten what you've done last week. All they're doing is feeling, and they're like, hang on a minute, I haven't had this. Well, if we've changed the mechanics of your ankle, it's likely going to change the orientation of all the mechanics through your knee. Perhaps there's some old stuff going on there. Who knows? Maybe there's new stuff. Now we have to work on the knee. Again, it's an opportunity. The door opens to, again, work the chain, think of the body and link, and as the whole person rather than just that ankle. And
patients forget. They forget their old injuries, man. And sometimes it's deliberate. Sometimes completely they just blatantly forget. But patients forget these things, so they only are reminded once that knee pain comes back on. You know,
Yeah.
It's interesting that you picked the knee from my perspective, because like I always say to patients, the knee is a stupid joint. It's a sheep. It follows. It doesn't lead, it follows. You know, like your hip will lead your knee, your ankle will lead your knee. It doesn't, very little movement in terms of, okay, yeah, it's got flexion and you've got a couple of degrees of rotation, but it's a follower, in my opinion. I feel as though a lot of knee issues can be resolved by the joint above and below, or the fibula head. But, you know, for the argument's sake, I feel like if we're not treating regions surrounding that, we're missing probably that bottom layer with a knee.
Oh, absolutely. No, I always call, whenever a patient comes and sees me with a knee problem, you know, I always say that the knee is the last joint I'm going to look. And the knee is the unhappy middle child, you know, it sits between the ankle and the hip, you know, it gets all the crap that flows up and down, you know, so everything just meets, collides in the middle. And oftentimes the knee's long rap sheet has nothing to do with the knee itself. So, you know, it is the number of different ways, I suppose, of saying exactly the same thing. But yeah, no,
that's an interesting way in, because you're already speaking away from the site of. So it's the same kind of situation with the neck pain example, where I think it's intuitive in our brains. Maybe this is from training. I'm not so sure, but to think at the site, but also away. It's just instinctive for a chiropractor. It's like you're going to adjust the spine because it's the spine, right? You're going to work on things, and look, you've got a hip issue. Cool. Maybe I'll zone in on that first visit. The second visit, everything else is going to be considered here as well. It's just, I mean, it's matching up with where the world of manual healthcare is going, and I guess the pain science angle is going. You know, it's thinking about the person rather than just the pure site of where the issues lie.
It's that entire biopsychosocial model, isn't it? You know, we need to look at the biology behind the individual, the psychology behind that individual, and what social support networks they have, and that is, you know, as true in sport as it is in any other line of work.
Well, I'm thinking, Dan, from your point of view with rugby there, like, can you give an example of that in the world of rugby? Or
we've had a few recently. I mean, a lot of the boys, they went to the World Cup, and that was obviously psychologically, that was difficult for a few of them. Actually, the traveling, the changing culture, that type of thing was quite difficult for a few of the boys out there in Japan. But you know, I remember speaking to one of the players in particular, and he was like, even just the order in which the food was eaten was different, and that threw them completely. You know, they're away from their families, they're away from their friends, well, not the club mates, their teammates, but rugby's a unique sport where, you know, you have all of that really nice close unity within the players, but they actually do have their own group as well around them, which is amazing. But they're away from the comfort zones, and you know, when they came back, it was very nice that they just jumped straight back in and they really embraced, you know, being home. So as lovely as it was for them to go, I think that a lot of them really, really wanted to come home as well, or wanted to be home. But it was, you know, for a lot of them, it's maybe an opportunity that you don't get maybe once in a lifetime to go to a Rugby World Cup, and you know, they were going to grasp it with both hands, and they did. You know, Wales were very unlucky in the World Cup, but they were. It was a great, you know, it was a great little experience to see the boys return back from it. But from a psychology perspective, you could tell that it would play a role. I particularly remember that conversation where, like, they eat their rice last, and they were like, right, okay, but even there's something as little as that really threw them. So yeah, it was good though, and learned a lot from that this year. So this is my first year in elite rugby, and I've learned a lot from the team of people around me. I've been very lucky to work with an extremely patient group of physiotherapists and an extremely willing group of physiotherapists, and an amazing group of professional athletes as well, which I'm very lucky to work with. So, but yeah, it was interesting that the return was something that I was expecting. I didn't know what type of impact it would have on them, but they didn't, they don't get me wrong, they were actually buzzing. They were really, really positive and energetic, but you could tell that when they were out there, it was a slog. It was quite difficult for them. But yeah, that's it. What about you? Have you got any specifics that you can kind of think of from a psychology perspective?
I guess not so much specific. I think more broadly, the psychology of an athlete is different than like an athlete following their pathway is different than the weekender, and that's something just to keep considering. I know, and Mika, this is probably pertinent for you with your Ironman stuff. Some of those longer form amateur but wanting to go as and do as good as they possibly can, that some of those guys, they're very their training is to such a volume and they've got so much intensity around their training, that I noticed the I guess the vibe shift when they come in the treatment room, and how they're oriented and what they're looking to receive from your care, and why that certainly does change. I think that's essentially in terms of the psychology, what my gut feel is that is a way through that training load, that training volume, is to get that kind of almost armor up to be like, nah, this is just going to happen. We're going to do this. And there'd be some interesting things underlying, I would imagine, but that was not my role. And my role is to support them in their goals. But yeah, just on the general front, I think an athlete's perspective, there's so much, especially when you get into the professional aspect of it, they're regimented. And I think that's like your example, Dan. They're so compartmentalized in their kind of daily living that it's like anyone. You take your kid out of school, or you put yourself on holiday, and that's an interesting one too. You put yourself in away from clinic mode, and you're like, okay, like, this is how am I going to structure this? Yeah.
I get that. I completely get that with the way that things are at the moment.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? Your body almost goes in holiday mode. And
I mean, from an elite rugby point of view, those guys are now like, this is their moment. This is their chance to actually complete so much in their life. And for something so small
their goal,
as that,
isn't it?
Yeah,
that is achieving their goal.
So small as rice being eaten last is like it's just unfathomable when every other aspect of their life for the last how long has been full support of this one goal. And I find that really interesting. I find the whole psychology stuff and what motivates and what drives and what how someone experiences these moments just fascinating.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's a guy who taught us on the masters. We did a tiny bit of sports psychology on the masters, and there's a guy there, Steve. I don't know his surname, begins with M, but Steve. He works with the Ospreys locally to us, and he is, if you like interested in reading on any of the sports psychology stuff, he is up there. I can definitely get that information, but Steve is really, really big in rugby psychology and sports psychology. Yeah, cool. But yeah, definitely worth a look. If I can remember his last name, I will send that over.
Well,
but we can post that later.
Tell you what,
we'll post that later.
Professional podcasting, Mike. All we have to say is, well, that will be in the show notes, guys.
Oh well, yeah. See, that will be on the show notes, guys, later on. But no, actually, on a slightly different slot, actually, when it comes to the psychology, though, I've been on a couple of the FICS games, so we've been treating athletes there, literally fresh off the pitch, and before they go on and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, the psychology side, of course you can do certain things you can do physically when an athlete is limping or carried onto your bench. And you look at him and go, right, okay, what am I supposed to do, right? But the point is, the psychological aspect of it is when a sports chiro does something, and they feel that immediate relief of pain. And then the chiro goes, right, son, pats him on the shoulder, goes, go get him. Man, that athlete is going to be fired up. They're going to be good to go, right? So that very small moment you have, it may only take 4 minutes that you have that athlete on your bench, but actually it can transform their performance in that tournament completely from whatever it was. They might have been apprehensive. They were worried about that injury. They're worried about a whole plethora of things. Even the current circumstances and situation, which we're not going to mention, of course. And we've done exceedingly well on that, by the way.
We have.
Yeah, it's always going to say.
Surprising. I thought somebody would have tripped up already, but but yeah,
I'm not doing a shot on the next one.
No, we'll just have to get Nat to come over here on our side. We can go and have a couple of beverages, together.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I'm coming back to the whole psychology thing, though. There is that element of us reassuring, us empowering the athlete to just, come on, you're good to go and do your thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's enough to be said in the sense of, just giving someone enough of a confidence boost to go, yeah, you're all right. You're absolutely fine. You can run that marathon now. Do you know what I mean? Or you can.
And in a funny way, it doesn't even matter then what you actually do.
Not really.
There's got to be an element of that, isn't it? Yeah. You can't just.
When you're looking into the whole placebo side of things as well. Yeah. I mean, I'm not for a moment thinking that chiropractic has anything to do with placebo, because I know it works. I know it makes a difference. I know it has this wide-ranging tidal wave of things that happen neurologically and even hormonally and whatnot in the body. It has massive effects. So it's nothing to do with placebo. But the point is, on the athlete side of the fence, does it matter if you're doing Graston or whether you're doing ART or whether you're doing chiropractic adjustment or if you just slap some tape on him? Does it matter?
Opening a whole can there, isn't it?
That's a can.
Yeah, I think
we're going to cover this in future episodes. Sports chiropractic chat.
It has to make a difference, and as long as you're making, there's various ways. I think the way that you can look at that is that there's various ways to achieve the same goals. So I think whether or not, like you said, whether or not that's a little bit of K-tape, whether or not that's doing some ART, whether or not that's doing some instrument work, regardless of what that is and regardless of what it is that you were doing, you're aiming to produce a goal or a change within that athlete. And there's various ways of making those changes. And I think ultimately, what you will find is that if you haven't necessarily ticked all the right boxes, the athlete will still get up off that bench and go, oh, that is better, but it's not right. So they're so honest, and they will tell you if something's wrong, they'll tell you something's wrong. Because they are actually really not all of them, because this is always generalizing, but some athletes in particular are very, very particular about how they feel and how, the range of motion that they should achieve in their ankle or whatever it is. Now, I'm the complete opposite, from the sense of I don't know that something's wrong until I'm in absolute agony. So I'm the worst person in terms of kinesthetic awareness, but athletes are so aware.
Maybe you shouldn't be confessing to that, actually. I
am awful. Awful.
Jumping in there, actually, but this was back in when I was doing my ICCSP course back in dark ages. I think it was Dr. Larry Bell who was telling us this story about going on Olympic Games or something like that. And there was one of the very famous sprinters at the time, Carl Lewis, American sprinter, came along. I think it was Carl Lewis. Anyways, So this is probably before both of you guys were even born. Anyways, anyways, so he was on the warm-up track, and Carl Lewis rocks up and goes, "Oh, my fifth rib is bothering me on the right-hand side." And the guy goes, "Yeah, no problem. Just hop on a bench. Let's adjust that rib and get you feeling better." And goes crunch, does his thing. Carl goes, "Okay, thanks." Off he goes to continue his warm-up, and comes back a few minutes later. Goes, "No, it's not right. Do it again. I still that fifth rib. I know it's the same one." And he goes crunch again. Off he goes. Comes back again. So apparently the guy came back 9 times before we were satisfied with this rib.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he went and won the gold medal.
Yeah.
But the point is, obviously he knew what he was doing, right?
Yeah.
And he just wanted that very specific thing done. And hence it was
feeling as well. They want that specific feeling of, if it's not what it should be for them, then even functioning at 99%, that isn't where they want to be functioning, particularly for a gold medalist. That's not their goal.
If you look at the error margin in 100-meter sprint, if you're 1/10 of a second slower, you came last.
Yeah, exactly. This is the highest percentile of efficiency and it's the upper limit, right? And
Absolutely.
What does separate is the minutest of margins. And these guys have developed such kinesthetic awareness of themselves that in that it's a way of satisfying that their overall idea of what they're doing, to say, I am fully prepared for this 10-second race or whatever it is. I'm fully prepared. I'm here in the best shape I possibly can get to. So then whatever happens after the fact, they kind of can look at that and go, I did my utmost, I did my best. Whereas if he has that fifth rib niggle and he's thinking of that in his warm-up, and he gets out of the block slow, well, mate, that's a lifetime. That's a lifetime of fifth rib. You're not going to let that drop like that quickly. For you and I, it's different. I can put up with a dodgy elbow going for a surf or something like this. It's not high on the priority list. But the thing on the
your livelihood doesn't depend on it, does it? In the end,
no, it doesn't. It's a big part of my livelihood.
I was just going to say.
Well, actually, it probably does actually depend on it.
I was just going to say. Oh, sorry.
Go on, sorry.
I was going to just go with the placebo. I think on that front, whatever we do, it matters from an intention point of view. I think I read that maybe sometime last year about setting up your first visit, setting up how the front desk looks, how the waiting room looks, how your room's set up. That's all very intentional. Thus, it contributes to the healing encounter. Can that be written off as placebo? That's the big question. Look, we've put ourselves behind our work, whether that's applying the kinesio tape to the best ability that we can, or getting out that Thule speeder board and doing some adjusting or something like that. It's we bring ourselves to that, so that kind of benefit is coming because of it.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
Actually, so this ball is usually on my desk in work, so that is always like one of the first things that patients see is it's a signed Pro 14 ball. So that's one of the first things that people see, and it's kind of like you do wonder, exactly as you're saying, does that, or do people immediately go, oh, he works in this field, so therefore he must know what he's talking about when it comes to these type of injuries, type of thing. Does it have that role, and does it play that role with people? I don't know, but it's an interesting point. It is a really interesting point.
Well, there's that element of people trying to study chiropractic and the effects of chiropractic. I mean, when you put it into that context of, your whole sort of healing and your clinic experience, of course, if you're administering a pill, it's very easy because you can double blind, you can randomize and all this kind of stuff. And nobody's any wiser. But obviously on the patient's journey to healing, you know, when in the chiropractic setting, there's probably 500 different variables along the way, none of which you can blind a patient to, essentially. You know, but if your receptionist is bloody grumpy, it's going to affect that patient. You know, if your car park is completely chock-a-block with like broken glass and everything, again, it's not going to help. You know, so all these kind of little things, they all matter. And maybe that's one of those big all-encompassing statements to start wrapping up today's session, lads. You know, we're by the looks of it, we're starting to get to that well over an hour mark. So that's absolutely flown by, man.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, man. Jeez.
Time flies when you're having a good time, though, doesn't it?
A good yarn with
a good little natter.
I was actually going to speak briefly. I don't know if Nat's got time for it, but Nat, did you have anything to do? Obviously, you part with FICS now, is involved in the membership commission and stuff like that. So were you involved with the education changes that have gone forth in the recent years? Because they have been, you know, the education has actually transformed in the last 12, 18 months, I believe, isn't it, with the ICSC award now. So did you play a role with that? And, you know, was that a very intense experience, if it was?
Yeah, so I wasn't a part of that per se, but I've understood the process, and the process has been absolutely monumental. I guess just to fill everyone in, FICS has been on a journey for a long, well, I'm going to say 2 years, just a touch over 2 years now. My involvement in FICS has been back since 2014, and that's the change that we're seeing now within the organisation is just light years apart. So when we had a new Secretary General join 2 years ago, Graham Harrison Brown, he brought a real ethos of almost corporate organisational capabilities and structure into FICS.
Professionalism, really.
Professionalism, totally, across the board. Cleaned up everything, looked at everything, and really designed a framework that we can now work with. Now, along that time, yes, the educational stuff, especially with the ICSC, was a key part of that, and getting that online and having that online capability and really cleaned up and improved was a massive part of what was undertaken. Since then, I think we're just going from strength to strength in terms of the educational capabilities now. It's taken so much for FICS to get a steady base layer there that we can now start to bring forward some new content, some different ways to deliver that, and to make it really, really relevant, not just to sports chiropractic, but to sports management in general. And I think that's what you'll start to see, is that there is going to be an opportunity for other professionals to access our content because it's relevant to care of the athlete. But in terms of what we've seen, it's night and day difference, mate. I think, and that's a testament to all the commissions, everyone who volunteers, gives up their time to put their all into what FICS is, and to see it actually land where it's rightfully meant to, and that is at the forefront of sports chiropractic education, and also as that unique body sitting in the international arena, essentially wheeling and dealing with all the other international federations, which when you go into the actual sporting organizational aspect of this, mate, the potential for us and sports chiropractors in general and FICS in general are huge. So that's just to watch this space over the next 2 years. I think, again, you'll see a great leap over the next two, based off of what we've accomplished already.
Absolutely. And now also we have the new education chair, Christine Foss from America, is very, very keen and enthusiastic to push all this extra stuff through as well. So we're seeing massive leaps in what's happening as we are making history as we speak, actually. So
Yeah.
we're adding this kind of slightly less formal way of doing things in film and the podcast, and or maybe a lot less formal as it goes, let's be honest. But you know, this is the kind of thing that we thought it was really important to engage across different boards of different parts of the board palette of sports chiropractors. So whether it's the older generation, the younger generation, or whoever happens to sit in the middle. So, you know, we're trying to make sure there's content for everybody. And so, yeah, that's very important. Cool. But hey, any finishing remarks at this point? Anything we desperately want to spend another couple of minutes nattering, or should we just bring forward a brief message from our sponsor?
I like that. I'm all over that. A brief message from our sponsor. I really like that.
Well, since we are officially sponsored by World Sports Chiropractic Federation, also known as FICS, of course, all the chiropractors now under the present conditions. Of course, we encourage everyone to check out the content. You know, keep learning, keep pushing yourselves, so you can hit the ground running when clinics are ready to open again. You can engage those patients more meaningfully. You can get your foot in between the door with the sports clubs and teams, and start establishing yourselves as the go-to person in your town, wherever you are, and have that team in place who complement you, and you can complement them. So I reckon, boys, you know, thank you very much for your time this evening. This morning for Nat. I really appreciate it, and can't wait to do it again soon.
No, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
No
thank
problem.
you. It's been a pleasure. And Mika, this is your first few steps to stardom, mate. So
buckle in. To start already.
Buckle in.
Good stuff. Hey, chaps, we'll keep it going. I'm gonna finish off this recording. Hold on, how does that work now? There we go. All right, good stuff, lads. Have a good evening and good day for Nat.
Thanks, heaps.